All right. Hi, this is Chris Peterson. Been with IMI for 27 years. Wanted to give just a quick overview of IMI, who we are, where we operate, their sectors, products, and so forth. So start off with a bit of an overview of where we operate. So we're broken up into multiple focuses. We do process automation, industrial automation, focus on climate change, life sciences, transportation. Now, the specific area that I work in is process automation, and that's where we've been applying the CPQ application. Within process automation, we can break that down into multiple market sectors that we deal with, a lot having to do with power generation, both on the fossil side as well as on the renewable and oil and gas, petrochemical, process industries, pharmaceuticals, marine, sanitary, water, and metals. And again, the blue areas that I've highlighted there are the areas in which we have started to apply our CPQ application. If we break down the market sectors and look at the portfolio of products that we sell, you can see it's a very broad portfolio. We deal with control valves, isolation valves, steam conditioning, safety relief, actuation, the superheaters, control systems. So it's a very broad portfolio. And within that portfolio, it's not a single brand of products that we work with. There's multiple brands of products, each having their own design history, technology centers, rules, logic, and so forth for configurations. And then as far as where we sell our products to, it's a global market. So we have a lot of different sales centers, engineering centers, and manufacturing centers across the globe. We sell to an international audience, and so the specific regulations, requirements that we have for our products varies from region to region, business to business, country to country. So there's a lot of different requirements we have out there from our customer base. So the point of what I'm trying to make here with this initial presentation is just kind of lay the groundwork for the broadness of our portfolio, the broadness of our requirements, and kind of how difficult it might be to fit a CPQ configuration into such a broad platform.
Have a little while and spend a little while here to kind of walk us through Chris's journey with Hackathon, and starting with kind of the very zoomed out perspective or the very zoomed out view. Before you had a CPQ solution with Hackathon, could you speak a little bit to the biggest challenges that IMI faced in terms of customer experience and the actual selling of your products?
Yeah, I could talk about two of the challenges that we had. One is that because we sell globally, our products need to satisfy a wide range of requirements, regulations, design codes, and so forth. It can be said that no two of our customers have the same set of requirements. The second challenge that we had was the breadth of our portfolio. We do portfolio selling, so we sell a lot of different products throughout the portfolio. And because it's so broad, it's difficult for our sales force to be as familiar with all of our available products and solutions as they should be.
Looking for a CPQ solution, how did you know that there was a CPQ solution that you needed?
Well, so one of the problems we had basically a couple of different challenges that we were looking to solve with a CPQ solution. So the first one was that many of the products that we have in our portfolio are managed locally by unique technology centers. Selection, sizing, configuration, costing, they're all accomplished by specialty tools. So when we wanted to expand our portfolio selling, the process became very inefficient as the process demanded the utilization of a dozen different tools to prepare just a single quote. So what we wanted with CPQ was we were looking to find an application, a single application, where we could make all of the functionality of these tools available. So going from multiple tools to a single tool. The second challenge that we were trying to achieve with a CPQ solution was because we had such a broad portfolio of products, it was difficult to ensure the optimal product selection in terms of meeting both the customer needs as well as achieving a financial benefit to IMI. So with CPQ, we can better manage the process and ensure that the proper products are selected every time for the customer. And the third challenge that we had was that for the specific markets we sell to, a certain degree of product customization is expected. However, if you lack the proper discipline, it can be difficult to limit product customization to only that which is required rather than just allowing customization for customization's sake. So CPQ helps to provide us the discipline we need to better manage our product lines.
And why did you end up choosing Tacton as your CPQ solution?
So we did a long search, a long process of trying to determine which application would best fit us. And we wound up getting down to two finalists. And those two finalists were selected based on the fact that they had the highest percentage of meeting our requirements, our stated requirements. Tacton was ultimately selected over the second place finish because of its look and flow. The analogy that some of our people made at the time was that Tacton felt like an Apple product while the other system had a more utilitarian look, more like a Windows product. And so we believe that our sales team would be more comfortable with the Tacton appearance and flow.
Well, that's music to my ears. I'm definitely an Apple guy. My brother's a Microsoft Windows guy, so I think that's a good answer. And then just finally going through the selection phase, could you speak a little bit to which type of stakeholders from your side were involved in that process?
Yeah, so we had three sets, we still do. We have three sets of stakeholders in our CPQ process. The first is the sales group, which is the primary users for the application. They had their specific sets of wants and needs, requirements, and so forth. The second set of stakeholders that we identified was our engineering team, because they were going to ultimately be the owners of the data within the application. We wanted to make sure that their requirements were met as well. And the third set of stakeholders that we had were our senior leadership, because they were going to be the drivers of business efficiency and expansion. And so at the end of the day, we wound up having three sets of stakeholders, each with their own sets of wants, needs, requirements, and so forth. And so, I can show you this chart that we built, which has the different sets of requirements, and you'll see where they overlap, where they don't overlap. And you have to kind of make the best decisions you can to satisfy the needs of all three sets of stakeholders.
And so now that we have a pretty good understanding of their starting point, the challenges that you faced at IMI, how you went about selecting a CPQ vendor, let's move over to the onboarding and the implementation phase. So did you guys over at IMI, did you have to change business processes, and in what ways?
We did. However, I kind of view it as the other way around. We didn't change our business process because we adopted CPQ. Rather, we adopted CPQ because we wanted to change our business process. In many ways, our business process was still more analog than digital. In order to increase efficiency and expand revenue, we needed to transform our business into a digital data-driven model. The adoption of CPQ was a critical component of that transformation. Now, was the process challenging? Yes, it was very challenging, but it was absolutely necessary for where we wanted to be as a business.
Yeah, definitely. And to kind of continue along those same lines of the implementation here. So could you just give us a little bit more background? When did you go live? How long ago was that? How long time did the implementation project take?
Yes, so we launched 30 months ago with roughly 15% of our portfolio included. To date, we've integrated about 60% of our portfolio, so the process is ongoing. From initial acquisition of the application to first launch was about 1 year. And since the first launch, we've expanded from 12 product lines to about 50. So it's a never-ending process. I think the analogy that I thought of before was when Disney was talking about Disneyland. He said it will never be complete. It will always be in a state of becoming. And that's kind of what CPQ is for us, is that we're constantly expanding our portfolio in there, and every so often we're constantly making updates to it. We're improving process based upon feedback we get from users. So we're constantly updating the application as we go, making it better, more efficient, more effective, and so forth.
And we at Tacton definitely view it the same way. For us, it's an ongoing journey of improving our CPQ solution. So happy to be able to provide that guidance and support going into the future. Let's move over to user adoption. So once we've implemented, we've gone live. Could you speak a little bit about your experience with the user adoption? What roles are using the CPQ solution at IMI?
Well, as I noted before, predominantly it's our inside sales team. They are our primary user group for the application. However, we also have engineering usage on it on a limited basis. But we're soon going to be expanding that to increase the amount of engineering usage that we have for it, as well as opening it up to our agent network. So we're kind of going both ways. We're doing more internal application usage, and we're also going to be doing more external. The internal application usage is because it's allowing us to become a bit more efficient to where we can expand the amount of design process that's done before the sale so that we can minimize the amount of hours that we commit to it after the sale. And so that allows us to bring more engineering process into it to design the products pretty much before they're sold.
Right. And then moving over to kind of, we've gone live, we have user adoption. Let's look into the results, what has been achieved. And I know it's always difficult to quantify it exactly. There's always many moving parts in regards to that. But what would you say is the greatest value that Tacton CPQ has been able to provide IMI as a whole?
Well, the number one reason why we did this, as I mentioned before, is that we're trying to move our business from a more analog base to a more digital data-driven base. And CPQ has definitely helped with that. It has done a very big part of helping us to get a better handle on our data and being able to manage it more effectively and to leverage it more effectively. That's been a key thing right there, because we have been doing what we've been doing for decades, and never before have we had such control over our data to be able to leverage it to improve our processes, make better decisions, be more proactive for our customers, understand the markets faster, because now we have access to the data for every sale that we make. So it's allowing us to, through analytics, do a lot more data leveraging than we've done in the past. In addition to that, we've had great help with the push towards a more standardized product line. So instead of having customization for customization's sake, we're able to do a lot more standardization, which has definitely benefited our supply chains and reduced the amount of engineering hours and we've had to commit to projects, as well as reduce our lead times.
And what about on the cost saving side? What type of benefits have you realized on the cost saving perspective?
The same ones I mentioned there. A lot of it has to do with standardization and reducing our supply chains. Because one of the problems you have is that if you have a very highly customized product line, then it tends to be a case of where you're purchasing equipment, buyout components, raw materials on a one-time basis, as opposed to being able to purchase them in bulk ahead of time, because you know how much you're going to be using in a year. If you're doing things one at a time, you never know that. So you wind up just wasting a lot of time buying things one at a time, as opposed to being able to buy them in bulk. So the supply chain has been a very big help, and also being able to reduce the amount of hours that we commit to an individual project. So those two are like the biggest benefits that we've seen to being able to get a better handle on our products and being able to standardize them better.
Definitely. And kind of zooming back out, going into this experience, what would you say surprised you the most about Tacton's software? Were there any surprises along the way that really surprised you?
Not really a surprise per se, because as I mentioned at the beginning, when we were determining which platform we wanted to use for CPQ, we had a lot of requirements. Now, one of the biggest requirements we had was for the platform to be able to do more intense calculations. We understand the search engine logic inside Tacton CPQ, and we definitely utilize that to a great extent. But one of the things we also needed to have was to be able to do some high-end calculations, which are, you can't separate them from our configuration process. So there's a lot of calculations we utilize special calculations were designed or related to specific industrial codes like ASME or EN, having to do high-end flow calculations, noise prediction, fluid dynamics, vibration, spray atomization, heat transfer. All of these things are part and parcel for when we do our product selection, configuration, sizing, and so forth. And we needed to be able to do all of those within Tacton itself. So we were very happy with the coding aspect that was available within it through JavaScript and other things that allowed us to do that. So we've been able to put in very high-end calculations, almost CFD, FEA quality calculations inside the tool that run dynamically with the configuration process, and it has no impact on the performance. So that's something that we've really appreciated about the tool, to be able to put all of those things in there to accompany our sales process.
And I definitely do think that is one of the things that we take a lot of pride in here at Tacton, is designing a solution that is very flexible and that you can really do a lot of different things with. A little bit of a biased question, but would you recommend Tacton's products or services to others?
Well, yes, I would. I mean, I kind of look at our business as it's probably utilizing Tacton in some ways to an extreme that's probably not normal. I mean, I would think that a lot more businesses probably have a smaller portfolio to deal with, and they've got products that are not necessarily so highly customized. And so I figure if Tacton can work for us, which is really at the outer edge of what it is, then I think it would work very well for any business beyond us that probably has a more standardized product line or a smaller portfolio and maybe less calculations. So yes, I would definitely recommend it for that, because I think if it can do what we needed to do, it definitely can do it for most anybody else.
Good answer. And then I'm also very curious to hear about the collaboration that you've experienced with Tacton. We have a big team that works with implementation, and it's definitely something that we take a lot of pride in trying to be very receptive and open and collaborative with our customers. Could you speak a little bit about your experience collaborating and working together with the folks at Tacton?
Oh, so it's been a good collaboration. So the first year that we were working on the implementation of this, we worked directly with Tacton. They helped us to gain some mastery over the application, because any application of this magnitude is going to take some time to understand all the ins and outs and inner workings of how it thinks and so forth. So we spent a lot of time figuring that out, building an internal team within our company to master how it works, how it could be products to be configured in there. And so that worked out very well. And then after that, we sort of took more of the driver's seat on this one, but we still stayed in contact. Tacton supplied us with a dedicated resource that we could call upon if we ran into questions, concerns. Maybe we were venturing into a new territory that we hadn't thought of before. And so they would be there to help us, giving us solutions and so forth. And so now we've kind of reached the point to where we're, I'd say 90% self-sufficient. We can do most of the things we need to do in CPQ. And occasionally when we want to expand into a new area, that's when we'll bring in Tacton services for some questions and answers and help out with there. So it's been a very good process from beginning to end. So I've been very happy with it.
You're in Florida, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I think then that also speaks to our growing presence in North America, where we are able to support our customers more and more heavily in the North American market. I have two more questions for you, Chris, before we open up the floor to the audience's questions. One is something that I'm always curious to learn more about in terms of change management. It's one thing to implement the tool, but it's a whole different thing to actually get people to use it and buy into it. Could you speak a little bit about your experience or learnings there in terms of change management connected to CPQ implementation?
Yes. So change management is definitely a major, should be a major focus point on this. We learned that in some ways the hard way when it comes, because change management is more than just user adoption. That's one aspect of it. But what you'll find is that whenever you introduce something as fundamental as this into your process, you have to understand that everything else in the system has to adjust to it, or at a minimum can't be in conflict with it. So one of the things that we discovered was that there were a lot of aspects to our existing process that were in conflict with what we were trying to achieve with CPQ. For example, we had KPIs. Every business has KPIs, every department has KPIs. And in some cases, those KPIs were legacy KPIs that ran a certain way. Well, the idea that we had with CPQ was we were going to change our business from one version to the next. But we found out later that those KPIs had never been updated because they didn't think they needed to. And very quickly, we discovered that those KPIs were in direct conflict with the goals we had for CPQ. So we were wondering why wasn't CPQ doing this? And we realized, it was because the people involved didn't want to do it because they were being KPI'd on doing the opposite. So you have to kind of go in there and figure out everything about it that is going to be in conflict with CPQ. And that can be everything from just the way the process works, the people involved, the things they're being KPI'd on, and so forth. So yeah, change management is a large part of it that you have to take into account. And like I said, it's more than just user adoption.
Definitely. I think that's a fantastic answer. I think many organizations perhaps kind of underestimate the amount of resources that are required to really drive through these type of changes. And I think what Chris is speaking to here in terms of setting the right KPIs and making sure that those align with the CPQ project, that's definitely a huge enabler for achieving strong adoption. And staying on the theme of user adoption, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but maybe we could spend a moment there again. In terms of user adoption, what would you say some other learnings and experiences there have been?
Well, as far as learnings is concerned, I don't necessarily know if there's learnings because the issues that we have with user adoption or had with user adoption were certainly not unexpected. It's the case, whenever you have a process that is being used for decades by a particular work group, they're going to become very comfortable with that, and they are very resistant to change. Even you can give them every justification under the sun as to why the new system will be better and more efficient. Doesn't matter. They're comfortable with the old system. They don't want to change. And so it takes a lot to move people along that path. And so you have to do it gradually. And we did ours gradually. We gave them, a long period where they were able to kind of go back and forth between them, and slowly removing them into the new system. And then eventually we got to the point of where we had to cut the old system off to move forward. But again, that was always the purpose. One of the reasons why we did CPQ in the first place, way back in the beginning of this conversation, I talked about how we had multiple tools that people were using. We had in some cases, I think someone recently put together a list, and it was like 200 tools that were being used across the sales force globally. And one of the things we were trying to do was reduce the amount of time, the maintenance time it takes to maintain 200 tools, to reduce that down to maintaining just one tool with CPQ. And so one of the things we've been doing is that as we've been implementing CPQ, we've basically been discontinuing those older tools because the logic and functionality that they had was moved into CPQ, and we didn't need them anymore. And so that's helped with adoption, because once you start, eliminating the old tools, then sales is like, well, I need a tool to work. So they start to gravitate towards CPQ because that's where they can find the tools. And as we get more of our products into CPQ, it becomes more beneficial because it certainly reduces the amount of work they're doing with the other tools by now moving it into a single tool. So it's been kind of a carrot and stick approach to get user adoption.
And then I think we can move over to the Q&A session here from the audience. So maybe if we could get the QR code back up on the screen. And if anyone has any questions here in the room, there is a microphone. We have a few minutes for questions. I do have another question for you, Chris, and that is kind of looking into the future. Where do you see kind of this space going? How do you think it's going to impact IMI going into the future? What do you have on your CPQ roadmap?
Well, it's definitely going to make us more of one business. And that's been a goal for a long time. When I showed the business in the first couple of slides, you saw how many separate business units that comprise the IMI family. I mean, just within one division, we have over a dozen different businesses, different technology centers, and so forth. And we've always considered ourselves one big company, but there's always been that isolation because of the different tools that are used and applications and so forth. So the nice thing about CPQ with its global footprint is that it is helping to make us more of a one company type approach, which is definitely going to help us in our portfolio selling, and it's definitely going to help give a wider audience to a lot of our products, which up till now have been very localized because that's where the expertise is. So CPQ is definitely going to make us more of a unified company and a more unified portfolio. So that is definitely the area we're going to continue to push on CPQ going into the future.
Interesting. And then one question from the audience is as follows. Why has CPQ not been implemented in marine, sanitary, and water? Is it not relevant in those areas?
No, it is. It's a combination of things. One is just the magnitude of the effort, in that we have multiple technologies, multiple businesses, and so it takes a certain amount of effort to integrate the products into them. And so what we were doing was we were starting from the businesses that would benefit the most from CPQ, and those are the ones that where we had products that could be done in multiple different locations, so we would get the most bang for our buck with those products. So those were handled first. And then what we did was we took some of our products, like say the marine and products like that. Those were more isolated, and they were also far more customized than some of the others. So we said, okay, we'll get to those later, but those were lower priorities for us. They're still on the agenda to do, but we wanted to get the ones that had the most bang for the buck first, and then do the more isolated ones later. And so we just haven't gotten to those yet, but they are on the agenda.
Interesting. And then finally, before we wrap up, we have one final question from the audience, Chris, and that is, you talked about integrating simulation capabilities into configurations. Are simulations done by calling on integration tools or building the simulation capability directly in Tacton?
Both. We do a lot of high-end calculations within Tacton, and in some cases we've had to think about that because we actually have pushed Tacton to the limit with some of our calculations to the point of where it will slow down performance. And so then what we do is we have to go back and we have to rethink how we're doing those calculations and come up with clever ways to make them run faster. And we've been successful at that in most of the cases. But yes, we've had a couple of stumbles where we put in something and all of a sudden we're like, wow, this is really slowing the process down. So we need to go back and rethink it. And in some cases, we have been using external applications. So we have got another business that helps us to develop some third-party applications. And so we've integrated those into CPQ. So what happens is CPQ will do its configuration, and then it will call this external application, which will do its thing and send data back. We use that, for example, for some of our curve generations. We like to present a lot of curves to the user to be able to understand the performance. And so we can't generate those curves directly in CPQ, but we have a third party that can do that. And so we just simply send data out, it sends data back in dynamically. And so the user, would assume that everything's happening within CPQ, even though it's using third-party software to generate those curves.
Thank you very much, Chris.
All right, thank you.